Hello everyone, welcome to Snippet 24, to follow on from Snippet 23. So what I've done is I've got a piece of 4 inches by 6 inches white card, which I normally have anyway for the snippets, and I've placed a piece of that underneath my gel press. You can just see the shadow there, just so I can see where I'm laying down my little pieces of copier paper. I've cut pieces of copier paper 1.5 inches square, and I can see where to place them because I've got a piece of 4 by 6 inch piece of card under my gel press, so I can see exactly where to place them and where they'll go on my card. So I'm just placing that on there like so. And then in the same way, I'm going to use Prize Ribbon Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to add the Distress Oxide ink just over my gel press. Make sure you've got a good layer of ink just going over there. Give that a good layer of ink. There we go. Don't know what that bit is there. We don't want that bit of fluff there. That's like a bit of a gremlin, so we don't want that. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is just add a couple of little spritzes of water just onto there. And I can take my time. I don't have to rush because I'm using that diffusion ink pad, which is the Distress Oxides. And now, because I've got that card underneath my gel press, I can see exactly where to place my piece of card because I've got that piece of card under the gel press, and I can just press lightly, so I know where to place it because I've got that card underneath. There we go. Let's lift that up. And then what we've got is we've got our pieces of white card or sort of openings, and I love the fact that you get a little bit of bleed as well. So let's just move that on to a blank piece. Actually, let's just see if we can get a second print, so I know exactly where to place it again because I've got that piece of card underneath. So I'm just seeing if I can get a second print. There's not much of a print, but it's actually there, and I can make something of that, definitely. I can sort of highlight those squares. So I can leave those squares on, and I've got the piece of card under my gel press, so I can just place that on one side. So let's just wipe my fingers because I've got that blue ink on there. So just wipe my fingers, and then what I'm going to do is just place some copier paper just around the squares. And then I'm going to take my Alstroemeria stamp set. I'm going to take the long Alstroemeria. Love this stamp. Let's take that. And then I can take my long acrylic block. Let's move this so you can see this. And then take my black ink. And I'm just going to ink the flower head of the Alstroemeria. Just ink the flower head. And then I can just add, let's add another piece of the card. Just there, like so. And then I can just take my Alstroemeria and just stamp that like so. Just allow that ink just to settle on there, just to make sure we get a good print, and then just lift that up. We can then take the next square that you've got that bleed in, which just adds to the overall effect. And again, we take that Alstroemeria And do we want to, I'm just deciding where we're placing that. Let's do it in the opposite. So I want it there. So you just end up faffing a little bit. So let's just have part of the other one in there as well. So I'm just using the Alstroemeria just to add parts of that stamped image into our square. There we go. Just so we've got that part of the image into the square. So it works rather nicely just to add that image. Now don't forget, these are snippets of ideas. You don't necessarily finish the whole thing in the 15 minutes, but that's not a problem. That's what it's all about, is the snippets. So just add that there. There we go. So let's just move that out of the way. And then what we can do while we're here, we'll just give the ink a little bit of a blot. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is take my Inktense pencils and just add some colour. And I'm just using the Wildflower 0313 and Persian Red 0330, which are my Inktense pencils. I'll just use a piece of the copier paper just to lean on, and I'm just going to add a little bit of the Inktense pencil. I've started with the lightest colour, just adding a little bit of that colour, and then I'm coming in with the darker, which is the red, just to add a little bit of that colour. Just add a little touch of that colour. And then what I'm going to do is just blend a little bit more with the orange, the orangey colour. And then I can just take my brush and then just go into that just to move the colour. So come into it just to move the colour. So just moving that colour a little bit. And it's, as you know by now, it's obviously better when you can add layers of that colour, not just one layer. One layer isn't going to cut it. So we'll just add a little bit of colour to this. Obviously, once I've finished the video, I come in and I add more layers of colour, just so that you know that, so that I've got the depth of colour. Once the video's finished and my card has dried a little bit, I add more layers of the colour, just so that it looks a little bit more vibrant and has depth. So I do add more colour once the video is finished. So just add this, just so you can see. And I'm not going to finish the colouring because that just takes a little bit too much time, but just so that you've got an idea of the colour into our flower. And then I will come back and add lots more layers to that, just to give it a little bit more depth and life, which it definitely needs. Right, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to add a little bit of stamping. So I'm going to add, I've got my paper leaves stamp set 930 from my newest release, and it's got some fine black text on the paper leaves, So I'm going to use the paper leaves just to add some little touches of fine black text. And I'm not just going to leave it so it's just in the squares. I'm going to add some outside the squares just to give a little bit more detail to the design, just to give it a little bit more interest. And it doesn't matter if it touches your flower a little bit, that just adds to the whole effect. And I'm keeping it so that I'm using the black ink because it gives me a little bit more depth to the design. Just brings a little bit more interest. So I don't want it too pale so I can't see it on this one. Just so it brings a little bit more depth. And it is rather nice when it actually goes over the flower. It works rather nicely. So I'm going to just add a little bit more just over the flowers, just so you can see that. And then I'm just going to there it is. Right, just so that you can see. Now we're on 11 minutes. So what I would tell you is, please add another layer of colour. What I'm going to do is place the square back on and then just add a little bit of shading around the actual square that we put on the gel press. And you need to do that with all the squares. You also need to add more layers of colour, and you also need to add some white splatters. Let's just rinse my brush. So just bring the shading to your design. Just bring a little bit of shading. But the idea with the snippets is that you can add as much or even add less if you wish. So just add, and I want you to do that to each square because it really pops. It really pops. So for instance, bring this square back in, take your grey Inktense pencil or whatever your chosen medium is to add the shading. You can use grey oxide ink, whatever you want, and then just bring that shading. It's just, obviously I didn't do the last little, it's worth just adding the little touches for me personally. So you're going to do this on each square, okay? And what I would rather you do is let this dry and then add some more layers of colour. I can do the other square off camera. Just add some splatters because that makes the white really pop. So just add some splatters. And then all as I would do is add my little Alstroemeria text here, or one of the sentiments. There are no gardening mistakes, only experiments, or go where your dreams take you. So I will add one of those sentiments, but just so you can see that, doesn't this make a difference? So I want you to go in and add more layers of colour so that it pops like this one does. So there was your first snippet, and this is snippet 24. I hope you enjoyed that. I love how it carries on with the theme, but in a different way. So I hope you enjoyed that. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.